Hello, everybody. So recently, my brother was talking to me a little bit about how he's getting into art and he really doesn't have any direction at all. And I remember that back in the day when I first got started with art, I didn't have any direction until I found a mentor. Luckily for luckily for me, my mentor was at the time working at Warner Brothers as an artist there, as I believe a concept artist at the time, and he's an art director now. I think for DreamWorks or one of those other companies. He's worked for all sorts of companies. He was the art director for Tresse, the Netflix show, and all sorts of stuff. So he's a pretty great artist, and he taught me some interesting things. So I'm going to teach you guys now. So you can really get 80% of the quality for just 20% of the knowledge, work, and so on. Pareto principle stuff. It applies to this just like it does to anything else. So really, all you really need to do to get started to make good art, maybe not great art, but good art, is just learn some fundamentals. And let's just get into what those fundamentals that you need to learn are now. So, first off, you'll need to learn shapes. That includes shape language and so on as well. Next up, you'll need to know values, light and dark, that means. And of course, these each add into each other and they kind of like they're additive. In other words, you put one onto the next and it gets better and better as you go. Next up, you'll need to know composition. That's the next most important thing, a very, very important thing as well, of course, just as these other two sort of tools are in your toolkit. And of course, color, if you decide you want to use color in your artwork. It is optional, but of course, you'll need to understand it if you're going to be using it. And to do all of this digitally, you'll obviously need to know digital tools as well. We're not going to get too much into that today, but knowing how to use Photoshop or Procreate or whatever other program you want to use. I'm using Krita here; it's free. So first of all, shapes. Everything can be broken down into simple shapes. Fundamentally, everything's pretty much made up out of like circles or spheres. If you're doing it three dimensional, triangles, or sort of pyramid type shapes. If you're doing three dimensional again, and yeah, cylinders, things like that. Squares, basic shapes, the things you learn as a little kid. And if you can make these basic shapes and you can sort of visualize them three dimensionally in your head by drawing them enough times, you can build up anything. And the great thing is that each shape has a sort of language. Well, all the shapes are part of a sort of language, I should say. And each one is almost like a word. It sort of functions like a piece of grammar or something like that. And, you've got your circles, which are, as you just saw, they're kind of your sweet shapes. They, like soft baby boy shapes. Then you've got your cylinders, which are kind of mixture of rounded and straight lines. You've got squares and triangles, which are sharps. Squares being a little bit more reliable feeling and triangles feeling more aggressive. But you can always, even round edges and so on as well as a part of this. And yeah, anyway, the 20% you need to know though is really just triangle equals scary, circle equals cute, square equals reliable and strong, and you put them together to make the things you want to make. Next up, you need to know your values. So, values are light and dark. It's what communicates the three dimensionality of your form more than anything to the viewer. So here we've got just a little bit of value going on that I've done sort of basic with the like pencil tool, but I'm gonna go in now and fill things in kind of messy, as you can see here, where I've gone in and done it. I'm recording afterward, of course, this audio just because I had to speed up the footage so it wasn't too long. People don't have crazy attention spans, including myself, honestly. Anyway, and then you go in and like you're seeing now, you fill it in with these different values. And really you only need pretty much three. I'm going doing kind of dramatic values here, but you get just light, dark. You want the light to face the light. In other words, you choose a light source. Like imagine that there's a big light up in the sort of top right here. You can see it's making a big highlight on the top of the head there. And then down from there, as you get farther away from it and things are blocked off by parts of the body, guess what you get? You get shadows. It's really simple. It takes a lot of practice, but it's okay because you'll get it if you just do it enough times and you can kind of imagine it. Like this is all just imagined for me here, so it's not perfect, but you can see it really communicates the three dimensionality of the form with not a huge amount of effort necessarily. I mean, just doing something as basic this is not a super clean job here. Like all I've really got here is, the highlight, a little transition zone as you can see around it. Then we've got the mid, like the first mid, which is just the base color of the object, or base value of the object, I should say. Sorry to confuse you guys. Base value. So, how light or dark let's say the skin of the creature is just naturally. Then you've got the mid two that I've put here, which is sort of the first layer of shadow. That's just, the sort of lighter shadows, you could think of it as like the shadows that are kind of um right where the light meets the shadow. And then next up, you've got like your darkest shadows, which are, as you've transitioned away from the light, it gets darker and darker until you get to the darkest. And then it gets kind of lighter again as you get to the reflected light, which is coming up into the shadow from the ground where the object is meeting the ground or the character is meeting the ground. So basically, the 20% you really need to know is just that light comes in as highlights where the brightest part of the light is hitting. Then there's the base color of the object. That's all you really need. And then you just need the shadows. You just need like one chunk of shadow for just the general shadow, and then the dark core shadow, which is like the Terminator and where the different objects meet each other. I don't remember the term for that, but you don't need to know the terms for it because you can use them anyway without the terms. Anyway, that's all you really need to know, guys. You really just need light, mid, and dark. Those three things, and you can use two mids or one mid or whatever. There's a million ways to do it. Some people just use three shades, some use four. You can use as many as you want, as long as you're going all the way from light all the way to the darkest of darks, and you remember to separate them like I've done with the red and blue lines here. You can see I've got the light zones and the dark zones. And remember, the lightest dark is darker than the darkest light. Remember that. You just got to keep them separated, guys. As long as you do that, you won't get muddy and things will look nice and clear. So that's the 20% you need to know. Let's move on to the next one, which is composition. Honestly, you often start with composition, especially if you're doing environments. And we'll get into why that is in just a second. So you can see now when you're doing composition, basically all it is about is what a thing is made up of. That's what composition means after all. As you can see, everything's same size here. That's not good. Same shape too. Not so good either. Same shape and same size. Really not good. Look at that. It looks a little bit more interesting when you make the shapes different sizes, even if they're the same. And look at that again. And look at that, different shapes and different sizes. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Kind of tells you where to look. And that's really what the point is. You want to tell people where to look. In other words, your viewers, where to look, and tell them a story with your different sort of shapes and so on. So as you can see, we've got these two medium-sized sharp shapes here, and medium, that's probably the most boring, right? Big or small can be pretty interesting. So look, we've got a small object, and it's different shape from the other two. So that's pretty cool. That means you might want to look straight at it, especially a circle, right? Just draws your eye right to it, and especially when two sharp things are pointing at it like big arrows. And you've got this big empty space around it. It's, one unusual shape, and it tells you it's important, right? When something's different, you know to look at it. So the 20% view here is just that you want to have big shapes, medium shapes, and small sizes. You can either make the big shape the important thing or the small shape the important thing in most cases. You want to vary them. And you also want to pay attention to the direction of the shapes, like where are they pointing and where are they drawing you to? And you want to repeat things. You can overlap shapes. You can use value. You can use everything in regard to this. At the end of the day, you're really just trying to do the simple thing of pointing someone's eye to a specific place and telling them a story. There's a million different ways to do it. You can be very creative with it, but at the end of the day, variety is the way you do it. Anyway, next up is color. As we talked about before, this is an optional one. All you really need to know about color is you need to know warm and cool, and you need to know they're relative. As you can see, we've got three different colors here, and the middle one, well, it's the same value and everything, and it's about as warm as the others, or it would be if it wasn't desaturated. See, that's kind of interesting thing, right? If you take the color out of an object, it takes away some of the warmth. What you need to know here, guys, really, the 20% view, it's pretty simple, this optional one. It's just that, and by the way, you can be very creative with it, as you can see. The redder something is or yellow something is or more saturated it is, in other words, more colorful it is, the more color you put into it, the warmer it feels in most cases. Or the bluer or more desaturated, closer to gray or black or white it is, farther away from the color it is with less color in it, the more it feels cooler when it's put next to those things. As you can see from these two different kind of purples here next to each other. One's a little bit more red, so it's warmer, and it's also more saturated. Anyway, guys, I hope this guide was helpful for you. If you want me to elaborate more or you have anything you want to know, just leave a comment. Please leave a like as well if you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you guys know when I upload. Thank you so much, and bye-bye. See you next time.